In the second sermon, we looked at the exiles and how, they engaged with what Jeremiah told them to do. And they were told and advised by Jeremiah that God is saying that you need to build, you need to plant, and you need to marry in the city. Building means that we need to own spaces. We need to be stakeholders in the city of Nairobi. And planting means that we needed to engage in the economic activity of the city. Marry, he said that we need to increase our influence in the city. Last week, we learned from Esther and Mordecai that it is very important for us to share our networks, that we all have contacts and can help each other, and we can connect each other to solve the very solutions for the problems and the issues that face our society. And we also say that we need, as Christians, to engage the structures that be. And we say that Nairobi is not neutral. You either influence or be influenced. So today we're going to conclude this series. And I've been looking forward to this because I really like the way it ends. And we're going to be reading from Esther chapter 8 from verse 1 to 17. And today I'm not going to read it for you. I have somebody special who's going to read it. She's just come back from leave, and we're very excited to have her back. So Pastor Shiro, if you can come and read this for us. But before she reads, maybe I can give you context to what was going on at this time. At this time, as we learned last week, Haman had been made Lord over all the land. And as he had been made Lord over all the land, he did not like the Israelites. He was offended by the fact that Mordecai, who was a Jew, would not bow to him. So he put out a decree, to get rid of all the Israelites, to destroy the entire nation because of the sins of Mordecai. But we saw that, Mordecai decided, to mourn, and he decided he's going to petition and do something about it. And he goes to Esther, who is his cousin, but he is the stepfather. It's kind of weird. But yeah, his cousin, who he had adopted and, was taking charge of her and, just mentoring her. And, he approaches her and says, "Hey, Esther, we need to do something about this." And we saw last week that she said, "Okay, I'm calling you to a fast and prayer so that we can engage the king." And this is where we pick it up in chapter 8.
I'll be reading from the NIV version, and it says, "That same day, King Xerxes gave Queen Esther the estate of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. And Mordecai came into the presence of the king, for Esther had told how he was related to her. The king took off his signet ring, which he had reclaimed from Haman, and presented it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed him over Haman's estate. Esther again pleaded with the king, falling at his feet and weeping. She begged him to put an end to the evil of Haman and Agagite, which he had devised against the Jews. Then the king extended the gold scepter to Esther, and she rose and stood before him. "If it pleases the king," she said, if he regards me with favor and thinks it right from the right thing to do, and if he is pleased with me, let an order be written overruling the dispatches that Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, devised and wrote to destroy the Jews in all king's provinces. For how can I bear to see disaster fall upon my people? How can I bear to see the destruction of my family?" King Xerxes replied to Queen Esther and to Mordecai the Jew, "Because Haman attacked the Jews, I have given his estate to Esther, and they have impaled him on the pole he set up. Now write another decree in the king's name on behalf of the Jews as seems best to you, and seal it with the king's signet ring, for no document written in the king's name and sealed with his ring can be revoked." At once, the royal secretaries were summoned. On the 23rd day of the third month, the month of Sivan, they wrote out all Mordecai's orders to the Jews and to the satraps, governors, and nobles of the 127 provinces stretching from India to Kush. These orders were written in the script of the province and language of each people, and also to the Jews in their own script and language. Mordecai wrote in the name of King Xerxes, sealed the dispatches with the king's signet ring, and sent them by mounted couriers, which rode fast horses, especially bred for the king. The king's edict granted the Jews in every city the right to assemble and protect themselves, to destroy, kill, and annihilate the armed men of nationality or province who might attack them and their women and the children, and to plunder the property of the enemies. The day appointed for the Jews to do this in all provinces of King Xerxes was the 13th day of the 12th month of the month of Adar. A copy of the text of the edict was to be issued as law in every province and made to the people of every nationality, so that the Jews would be ready on that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. The couriers riding the royal horses went out, spurred on the king's command, and the edict was issued in the citadel of Susa. When Mordecai left the king's presence, he was wearing royal garments of blue and white, a large crown of gold, and purple robe of fine linen. And the city of Susa held a joyous celebration. For the Jews, it was a time of happiness and joy, gladness and honor. In every province and in every city to which the edict of the king came, there was joy and gladness among the Jews, with feasting and celebrating. And many people of other nationalities became Jews because fear of the Jews had seized them.
Thank you very much. Come on, give her a hand. Now, last week we had left it when Esther and Mordecai had this, back and forth between them. Mordecai had felt what, he needs to do with regards to his people. So he puts on burlap and he puts on ashes, that's sackcloth and ashes, and he takes to the streets and he begins his period of mourning. He goes to the city, to the palace gates, and he decides to engage Esther and tell Esther, listen, this is what's going on. But Esther, at the time, was just hesitant. She said, to approach the king, I need to have been summoned to his court, despite the fact that she was a queen. But she gains courage when Mordecai just tells, talks to her and tells her that, hey, don't think for a minute that when all the other Jews are being destroyed, that they will leave you alone. You are going to be destroyed too. So then Esther tells Mordecai that, we need to go into a period of fasting and prayer. And that's where this, we see, this happen right here. She approaches the king. And on approaching the king, the king is, she approaches the king, and he is favorable. And he raises his scepter and listens to what their petition was or what their cry was. And, he says, okay, I hear what's going on. And he overturns, first of all, he gives them the estate of Haman, and then overturns the rule and grants them the kind of decree that they would like. And Mordecai, decides, we are going to we are going not only to fight for our people, but give our people the responsibility to be able to protect themselves. So Mordecai and Esther align themselves to the vision of rescuing the Jews in exile. This vision now begins to, focus their efforts, and it galvanizes them to create a team spirit, and they strive towards the goal of bringing deliverance for the Jews. Compelled by the gravity of the situation, Mordecai and Esther now begin to strategize for the rescue of the Jews. They enlist the king's cooperation and their assistance for their plans. Mordecai thinks of what needs to be done. He says, hey, there's a problem here, there's a crisis here, but something needs to be done. So he thinks about it, and in doing this, he thinks of also how he can get the resources that he needs to be able to overturn this decree by Haman and to rescue his people. So he determined specific actions that needed to happen to the Jews for them to be delivered. And for them to be delivered, he required for the king to be on his side. So he approaches the king. They figure out a way. They go into a period of prayer and fasting. They approach the king. The king hears them, and the king overturns this decree that they have. Mordecai, through the king's edict, marshals and inspires the Jews to take responsibility for protecting themselves. In fact, when we read in chapter 9, this is when the 12th month, the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, reaches. And the decree, the original decree, was about to be passed on. And we see that the Jews gathered, psych, because they had somebody backing them. They had the king's decree, the king's overturned decree with the seal of the king. And they were able to protect themselves and, fight against those who were, against them and were trying to destroy them. In chapter 10, we see a picture of Mordecai as a visionary leader who continues to use his influence to work for the benefit of the countrymen. You see, what amazes me about this story is that the vision is motivated by a crisis. The vision is motivated by a crisis. And the crisis was so clear. And so was the vision for deliverance. It was such a compelling crisis and a compelling vision that Mordecai and Esther have to focus their efforts, unearthing skills and things that they did not know that they had inside in order to save their people. In essence, the crisis or challenge before them became the opportunity for them to be great people. How does this apply to us, Mavuno Downtown? See, for many of us, we have a platform. And this platform is a platform that God has given each one of us. The DNA of a legend is in each one of us. But there's a need for our mindset to understand that. It is not just for them who are out there. Each one of us has that DNA to be called a legend. God has called you to be a legend, and He has given you everything that you need to be a legend. People who have done great things, the legends of our society, when we name all of them, none of them started, by doing great things. They all began by solving a crisis, solving a problem, and doing what it took to solve that crisis or problem. They all started small. But the determination to be effective and to create a solution led to greatness. Mavuno Downtown, here is my one message for you today. To become a legend, it's not about elevating self, but about lifting others. Let's take a look at what Mordecai did and things that we can adopt to become legends and to become great and to change this city of ours. The first one is that we need to start where you are. For Mordecai, starting where you are meant that he adopted, first of all, Esther. He mentors her and raises her for all these years to the point, she became the queen of the land. And in the spaces that he was in, he understood, the structures. He understood that, what he needed to do. And he used those resources to save his people. Mordecai mentors this woman. He's there in the time of need. When he needed her to talk to the king, Mordecai is able to approach her. He's able to speak to her and convince her and tell her who she is, to the point of her acting and delivering the people. Mavuno Downtown, we need to start where you are. What does that mean for you? This crisis of things that are happening in our city. Some of us need to just mentor somebody, to talk to somebody. Whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member, whether it's a colleague at work, because you don't know in mentoring them and speaking positive things into their lives who they will become. Start where you are. The next thing is use what you have. For Mordecai, he was very vigilant and attentive. While he was at the palace, he overhears about the assassination of the king, and he goes and reports this. And by him doing that, he gains favor with the king. To the point that when they approach him, when there's a real crisis, concerning his people, the king grants him favor. Use what you have. What do you have in your hand? What is it that you're holding on to? But because of us, hiding in our conclave of comfort, we are not using it to change our city. What is it that you have? The third thing is do what you can. The Bible tells us that when Mordecai heard of the king's decree to annihilate the Jews, he tore his clothes, he put on some ash, and he took to the streets. He protested against this decree. He wanted to let them know that, I am not going to take it lying. That something has to be done. He takes responsibility for the action, for his people. And as an official, as a lord in the house or in the government of the king, of King Xerxes, he could have run away. But he decides to take responsibility for his people. When I think about this, I think about, the upcoming elections. Normally, a time filled with so much tension. What can we do to reduce that tension? What can we do to fend off those who are trying to bring strife in our society, in our city? Most of us want to deal with bigger giants, and we have not even dealt with the smaller giants. And I just can't help to think of some of the heroines that we've had in our own city. One of them is Wangari Maathai. You see, she never set up to be a Nobel Peace Prize winner, a Nobel laureate. All Wangari Maathai wanted to do is she wanted to feed the people of her village. We don't even know her mostly for that. We know her for what she did, when she fought against the government. In fact, that story came up as a result of somebody walking into the office and tell them, "Hey, have you heard?" What? Tell me. They are going to hive off Central Park and they're going to build a huge building right there. She was so incensed by it that she went there with her fellow protesters and protested. And today, the very building that was supposed to be built over there is a few meters down the road. It looks beautiful right where it is, but we still have our Central Park. She was able to fight for the environment, the trees, and all that. The thing is, she did not set out to do a great thing or to become a legend. What she actually did is taking small steps. She decided, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to protest with my friends, with my people, so that the government does not do this ludicrous thing. In fact, if you ask me, if she knew the craziness that was going to come after that, the magnitude of what she was doing, I bet you she would not have done that. But it began by taking small steps. She saw the need in society. She saw the crisis. And like Mordecai, she responded to it. To become a legend, Mavuno Downtown, it's not about elevating the self, but about lifting others. Here is what I learned from this story, and these are a couple of takeouts that I'd like for us to take out, as we conclude this series. The first one is that a legend invests in others. Mordecai was selfless. I just can't help to think of, he is in exile and his uncle passes on. And then he decides to take on the daughter of his uncle. When you're in exile, the conditions are not, conducive for you to be able to take on other people. It's hard and rough and tough. But Mordecai is selfless. When a crisis arises, he does not think of himself to run away, to self-preserve himself. He invests in others. And he fights for others. So the first thing, Mavuno Downtown, is for a legend, invest in others. We need to invest in others. We need to get out of our comfort zone. Sacrificially get to the place of investing in others. The second thing is we need to be the voice of change. Be the voice of change. We are a society that is very good at highlighting problems. I mean, I can't help to think when our people just came back from the Olympics and the hashtags were, Wario this, Wario that, and that's our CS for sports. We know how to make noise and just criticize the government. Mordecai did not do that. Mordecai highlighted the problem, yes, like KOT does, but he went a step ahead and did something about it. He provided the solution for the deliverance of his people. He acted on this solution and he engaged the structures. This is what God is calling us to do. Invest in others and to be the voice of change in our city. To become a legend, it's not about elevating self, but about lifting others. Say it after me. To become a legend, it's not about elevating self, but about lifting others. This is your charge. This is your challenge, Mavuno Downtown, as we conclude this series. If you can, let's rise to our feet.